Hey, it's Izzy and what's been busy? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Himi Gouache paint set that has 36 colors and also includes their twin jelly cup design. Gouache is something that I've been really wanting to experiment with, give more of my time to, but honestly there have been just other mediums that I have been completely more immersed in. But today I'm going to really try to give my all into this medium and really testing out specifically the Himi Gouache set. So without further ado, let's unbox this case. So I ordered the pastel blue case, but there was actually plenty of other colors. The blue just happened to be my favorite color. When you open up the case, the first thing you see is a white paint palette, which was a pretty good size. And then you see a sheet of paper that includes some instructions. And lastly, you have the paint brushes. And they came in this beautiful turquoise color. And I definitely loved the way these paint brushes look. They were just so beautiful. Couldn't help but just look at the beautiful bristles and barrel. And it also came with this gold lettering, which I thought was kind of bougie for paintbrushes. Now let's look at this cup. Now the cup, as you can see, is split into two. Prior to this, we just usually had the standard cup and it was completely full with one color. But since this is the twin cup, you get to see two colors at once. And I thought this was kind of cute that the case came with like a little cubby where you could store your paintbrushes, which I thought was so handy. It's time to rearrange these colors. I always like to rearrange the colors in rainbow formation. Rainbow order is so important when you're trying to find specific colors, so it just was a lot easier to visualize and see the colors in this particular order. Now after that was all done, it was time to start opening up the jelly cubes. Now, I had such a hard time opening up this first one. I don't know what it was, but I had a really hard time opening up this particular cup. I think it just was a little stubborn, but I took some time off camera, so I decided to grab a pair of scissors and I tried my best to open it, and it was kind of messy at first, but honestly it was paint, so paint is kind of messy in itself. But after that, I really didn't have any other issues opening up the other ones. I think this one was just really stubborn, but if you just look at the paint, oh my goodness, it is just so beautiful and glossy. Now I know that everybody says that these particular gouaches look very much edible, and I know they're not edible in any way, shape, or form. Please do not eat these, but they do kind of look delicious, like colorful pudding. But do not eat these in any way, shape, or form, please. It was time to actually start swatching the colors. I decided to swatch the colors twice. The first time I swatched it, I watered down the paint, and then the second time I swatched it, I decided to use the thicker version of it. Since this is gouache, it is like a in-between of acrylic and watercolor, and I think I got a little too excited about the swatches because I accidentally kicked the tripod. I'm so sorry, y'all. I kicked y'all, but it's okay. Don't mind the angle. We keep calm and carry on. But as I kept swatching the colors, they do dry a little bit differently than some other mediums I have tried. Now, I did do my research prior to buying this set, and yes, I did learn, in fact, that the gouache does dry a little bit differently than it appears to the eye. So this was going to be pretty interesting to see how things were going to turn out. Now, as you look at the sheet of paper, you can just see how beautiful and opaque these colors are. But it was time to put this sheet of paper aside, grab a new sheet, and start that whole process all over again. So after the whole swatching process, I pretty much understood how to use them, how much water I need to add, and the last and final swatch is... okay, I am in fact painting something. I decided to swatch white. I don't know why I swatched the white, because looking back at the footage, it looks like I'm literally swatching nothing. But I promise you, I am swatching the white, in fact. And if you just look at this sheet, looks so good. Nice and vibrant and opaque. If you look at the color palette that they gave us, it's a pretty good set. I mean, to be honest, they gave us 36 colors. It's more than enough colors to work with. And to be fair, with paint, you can always mix colors. It was nice swatching all the different colors, but it was time to actually sketch something in order to use the paint. I decided to sketch an eye. Now, I think this was honestly perfect for the video because I just recently came out with an eye tutorial which you can go check out by the way, but I did that digitally, so I thought maybe it'd be interesting to see a traditional version of this. And secondly, whenever I'm testing something new, I always like to go with an eye. I think an eye is just very simple, it's not too complicated, but you still have enough colors to deal with, and I've just drawn a bazillion of these eyes, so I know what to expect at this point. Because yes, this is in fact my first time. I did buy a set back in 2021, and I remember trying to even film a video using this particular set, but because I only have experienced using acrylics back then, I honestly had no idea how to use this set. I mean, it was just way too thick, and then I picked this portrait specifically, so it had all these different intricacies and challenges, and I just had no idea what I was doing. And to be honest, the quality wasn't all that amazing in terms of the video, so I just completely scrapped that, and I actually never finished the portrait. So I would say this is my first time really devoting proper time to this particular medium. I'll finally actually have a finished product in the end, but I really want to explore and see what I can do with gouache. I thought gouache would be a perfect option because I have been using acrylics for a long time, but let me just tell you, there are a lot of pros. There are a lot of pros to acrylic paint, but there are a lot of cons as well. I'd say a big con that I have with acrylic paint is it just dries way too fast. I mean, literally, I will put down something simple on the palette, like I'll take my time to mix up all the colors, and then the paint is literally dry within like 5 to 10 minutes. So I noticed I kept watering down the paint in order to make it last longer. Then that ultimately ends up thinning out the paint and it's not as opaque. So it's just a whole thing with acrylics that sometimes it was a little too thick and it was just drying way too fast, and so I'm trying to water it down because I really wasn't a big fan of watercolors either. I personally don't like how messy watercolors are or how clear and transparent they are. It's personally not my cup of tea. As you can see, I started painting the eye, and I also have a washi tape border in order to give it a nice clean edge in the end. And I was a little hesitant to put down that first stroke, to be honest, because I started off with the darker values first. I usually start off with the darker values and then build up to the lighter values, so then I can have a better idea on how I should go forward with this particular piece. And honestly, the process went pretty smoothly. I think this time around I learned from my past mistakes, and I did in fact add more water. I did use a mixed media sketchbook for this. I did in fact have some watercolor paper, and that's the paper I used to swatch the gouache with, but I was like, let me see what it's like with mixed media, since this is my baby. Mixed media sketchbooks have always been the go-to sketchbook for me, so I wanted to see how would this react with the paper. I can honestly say that I didn't actually have a whole lot of issues with warping, but I felt like I still added quite a bit of water where I felt like this page could have completely buckled up, but it went pretty smoothly. Now we run into the first thing I just noticed, which I was aware of. I was aware that the paint was going to dry a little bit differently than what I anticipated because I did do some research. I will say some of the colors were a little bit darker than I anticipated, so I realized with this particular medium, since I am not used to the colors quite yet, it was going to be literally impossible at this point to try to mimic the reference photo exactly. So I just tried to focus on its main key values and not get too caught up into all these little details. I think that's the beauty of gouache. Another thing you're going to want to keep in mind when using gouache, the big difference between acrylics and gouache is the fact when you put acrylics down, usually you just go over with another layer once it's dry, and you can pretty much just start over. And because of its opaqueness, you don't even have to see the layer that was underneath that. With gouache, it kind of acts more like watercolors. So if you decide to put something down on top of whatever's underneath it, is going to reactivate again. So that doesn't mean you can never layer something else on top of it, but if you decide to add more water, it will reactivate the gouache, which is great for saving on paint because I realized I didn't have to really mix as many colors again, which is great in this case because once you've mixed up a color and you still have it on your paint palette, you could just reactivate it with a little bit of water. But just know that when you're working with it on your actual art piece, it will also reactivate. So I was kind of a little confused in a way on how to blend the colors because it was just constantly reactivating the gouache, and sometimes I wanted a really sharp edge and I didn't necessarily want the colors to always blend, but because it was always reactivating because of the water, it was definitely a learning curve. But I think you just learn to know how much water to add. You definitely have to learn on your own, okay, when is it time to add more water and when is it time to go for a thicker consistency. And I also had this cute little spray bottle right beside me so I can constantly spray the paint on the side, because gouache will still dry out. Even though you can reactivate it, you want to make sure the gouache is constantly moist. As you can see, this eye is coming together quite nicely, and I wanted to mention that I decided to use the brushes they gave me. Yes, I only used the 3 brushes that the Himi gouache set provided. I thought it was going to be an interesting challenge. Initially, I thought, oh no, if the brushes don't end up working out, I'll just use a different set of brushes that I have. But these brushes were honestly really nice. So with the smaller brush, I used that for more of the finer details like the eyebrow, the eyelashes, and with the other brushes, I decided to use that more for the base and build on top of that. Now it's time to peel off the washi tape. It's literally so satisfying. Like, I never used washi tape really, and so it was so satisfying peeling it off, and you see that nice clean edge. And as you can see, here is the final result of this particular eye. I am so happy with how this came out. Now you may be thinking, isn't this the end? Well, actually, no. I was initially only planning on drawing one eye, painting one eye, and just kind of ending it there. But I was feeling like I was on cloud 10, so I decided to paint another one. As I was starting to paint this particular eye, I actually struggled a little bit. I think I had a bit of a hard time trying to figure out what colors to mix, and because I just painted a eye that was full of warm tones, I didn't know how to mimic that same vibe but just add cooler tones to it. So you could see this one went through a lot of different ugly stages that I don't feel like the other eye went through. Like, ooh, as I'm looking back at this, it kind of looks bad. It does look really bad, but it does get a little bit better. So you always just have to get past that ugly stage. I know it can be really hard to look at times, but it really will help later on building a good foundation. This particular eye had a lot of creases and wrinkles because I think it was based off of a person who was a little bit older. So you have this very youthful, glowy eye on one end, and then we have another eye that's kind of wrinkly and a little bit on the cooler side, so it just gave a completely different vibe. And I realized as I was painting it, I was like, wait, I've never actually have painted a older eye before. I haven't even drawn one really. But I look at this particular clip and I think, this stage, it looks so good. But I had to add texture to it. It kind of made me a little sad that it wasn't going to be as smooth because the reference photo didn't show that, and I really wanted to kind of test it out and see how could I make this eye look like it was textured but more in an abstract way, and it was a big challenge. I would say in the end it's not my favorite, but I think I did my best. So even if it didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out, I'm grateful for this amazing opportunity that I was able to at least make something, and I'll learn from this particular mistake. I did in fact buy this set on my own, by the way, so this video is not sponsored. This is a 100% honest review. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!